Washington International Group was a successful multi-billion-dollar company that provided engineering and construction services in more than 30 countries around the world. Tara Grant was a successful, well-educated, and well-paid executive in the company. Though she was a systems manager based in the Detroit, Michigan office, she commuted Monday through Friday all over the world. Every Friday evening, she would hop back on a plane so she could spend the weekends with her 2 young children and husband, Stephen Grant. On Valentine's Day 2007, Stephen walked into the Macomb County Sheriff's Office to report his wife missing. Tara DeStramp grew up in a tiny town called Perkins with a population of less than 100 located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Though the rest of her family was perfectly happy with small town life, Tara was destined for more. Even from a young age, she wanted to excel in her life and longed for the big city life. She was determined to go out into the world and create her fortune. In her teenage years, Tara grew into a brash, outspoken young woman, often berating and verbally attacking boyfriends who didn't seem strong enough in her eyes. She was known for her controlling nature and her explosive anger. After graduating 3rd in her high school class, Tara attended Michigan State University in Lansing. It was there that she first met Stephen Grant. During the summer of 1994, Tara was just finishing up her degree. Stephen was in her immediate group of friends and had pursued Tara for several months before she finally gave in and accepted his invitation for a date. Stephen was obnoxious and a bit awkward, but he wasn't submissive like other boys that Tara had dated. She saw potential in him. Though he had dropped out of college, he worked in the office of a Michigan state senator, and that impressed her. Stephen often bragged of his aspirations to pursue a law degree, and she envisioned him having a career in politics. Stephen knew that Tara had grown up in a tiny town and longed for the big city life. On their first date, he gave her a tour of Detroit, driving her through the mansions of Grosse Pointe, the Detroit Institute of Arts, and taking her for a meal in Greek Town. Tara was impressed. But what really sealed the deal for her was when her grandmother died. Stephen showed up unannounced to the funeral to console her and charmed her family. Tara was in love. That December, Tara graduated from university and moved in with Stephen. It wasn't long after that before he proposed, and she cheerfully accepted. Eventually, Stephen's job with the senator ended, and he was perpetually having trouble finding work. In early 1995, Stephen's father offered him a job at the family tool and dye shop in Mount Clemens, just north of Detroit. The pay wasn't that great, but it was enough to survive, and Tara liked that it was closer to a big city. In September 1996, Tara and Stephen were married, and Tara got a temporary job at a company called Morrison Knudsen, which would later be acquired by Washington International Group. She was a perfect fit for the company and was very focused on her new career. It wasn't long before her determination paid off, and she was quickly offered a permanent position. Though money was still tight, the couple had their first child, a daughter, in 2000. 2 years later, they had a son. Even through the pregnancies, Tara continued climbing the corporate ladder, eventually landing a high-paying executive job. By 2003, her job duties required her to travel to sites where the company had construction jobs all over the globe, which left Stephen to deal with the children. Stephen, still working at the tool and dye shop, couldn't work and take care of the kids, so the couple hired an au pair. Through the years, the Grants went through 7 different au pairs, eventually settling on a beautiful 19-year-old from Germany, Verena Dirk. Stephen spent as much time as he could with the kids, but because of her job, Tara was only able to squeeze in the weekends. Though the income she brought in was good, Stephen resented his wife for leading a jet-setter lifestyle while he stayed at home. By 2006, Tara was making $168,000 a year. Even her year-end bonus of $28,000 was more than the measly $19,000 he was bringing home from his father's machine shop. As an executive, Tara was on a regular schedule of flying Monday through Friday 2,000 miles away to San Juan, Puerto Rico. The flight was 5 hours each way, but she came home to be with the family every weekend. Over time, Stephen's resentment of Tara continued to build. But when Tara decided to start taking golf lessons on the weekend, it didn't sit well with Stephen. Tara, always wanting to enhance her career, knew that lots of business took place on the golf course. Frustrated and angry with the lack of attention from his wife, Stephen developed a relationship with their young au pair, Verena. It started out as harmless flirting, but in early February 2007 it became physical. It started with kissing and continued with him requesting sex. On Thursday, February 8, before Tara returned home from Puerto Rico, he gave her oral sex for the first time. While Tara was in San Juan that week, she wrote a lengthy letter to Stephen. In the letter, she apologized to him for pushing him away and making him feel inadequate. She thought it would be a good idea for them to renew their wedding vows. Tara possibly intended to give him the letter on Valentine's Day the following week, but she never got the chance. By Valentine's Day, Stephen had walked into the Macomb County Sheriff's Department and reported his wife missing. As Stephen talked to detectives, he gave a long and rambling description of what had happened 5 days prior, the night she went missing. He said that he and Tara argued that Friday night over the phone as she drove home from the airport. She had been delayed by a snowstorm and informed him she would need to go right back to San Juan the next day. When she got home, they argued for 20 minutes more before she made a phone call and told someone to come pick her up. He assumed she had called the car service she normally used to take her to the airport. Stephen told detectives the last thing she said to him was to make sure to bring the car to the dealership on Monday to get a dent fixed. Then a black car came to the front of the house, she got into the back, and it drove away. 10 minutes later, their au pair, Verena, came home. When detectives asked why Stephen had waited so long to report his wife missing, he told them it was the suggestion of her boss. Stephen had called her work just after she went missing, and her boss told him he knew nothing about Tara needing to go back to San Juan early, but advised him to wait before reporting her missing, and he would talk to public relations first. Stephen had also called Tara's sister and mother, but neither of them had heard from her. He told them he'd be happy to know she was just in a hotel with a lover. He just wanted to make sure she was okay. Stephen told the police he didn't trust Tara's mother or her boss and suspected they were both lying to him, possibly trying to cover up an affair she was having with her boss. Stephen then confided to the police that he and Tara had been to marriage counseling and he was considering hiring a divorce lawyer. To detectives, this was an immediate red flag. Stephen then rambled on about the company that she worked for. He explained that Washington International Group was involved in the manufacture of chemical weapons and suggested possibly that she had been exposed to nerve gas or kidnapped by terrorists. Again, detectives thought these were extremely odd details to add to the story. During the questioning, in an attempt to show detectives he was honest, Stephen also admitted that he had a warrant out for his arrest for unpaid traffic tickets. Detectives weren't interested in that and let him go and started their investigation. When asked about their au pair, Verena, and if he was having a relationship with her, Stephen jokingly replied, "She'll never tell," and left it at that. What he didn't tell the police was that he and Verena had had sex for the first time just minutes after he claimed Tara disappeared in the black car. The interviewing officer also took note of a scratch on Stephen's nose and asked if he had got into a fight with Tara on the night she left. Stephen said he hadn't. But he said that he told her if she went back to Puerto Rico, the kids wouldn't even miss her because he was the one that took them to soccer every day. Then he told the detective he wasn't even sure if he wanted Tara to come back and that his family all thought she was having an affair with her boss. The first thing detectives did after Stephen left was to call Tara's work. Her boss confirmed that she hadn't shown up for work that week and had never missed a day of work in her 10 years with the company. Tara also used a company cell phone and credit card. Her employer verified that neither had been used since she had arrived home the evening of February 9. The police also contacted Tara's family. Her sister told them that she had spoken to Tara for 40 minutes during her layover in Newark on February 9, and she hadn't mentioned anything about going back to Puerto Rico early that weekend. Police were instantly suspicious of Stephen and assigned someone to watch his house, but Stephen wasn't stupid and noticed right away when he called the lead investigator to complain. The investigator explained that they couldn't be too careful and asked if he could come over to Stephen's and ask him a few more questions. When Detective Sergeant Brian Kozlowski arrived at the Grant house, he brought Detectives Jeet, Pamela McLean with him. Kozlowski took Stephen into the kitchen to question him more while McLean questioned Verena. Verena told Detective McLean that she was out with some friends on the Friday evening, and when she arrived home that night, Tara had already gone, and the kids were asleep. She told the detective that she thought it was odd that Tara had left and that she had called a car service to take her to the airport. She told police that Tara normally drove herself to the airport each week. This contradicted what Stephen had told the police. He told them Tara had always used a car service. In the kitchen, Detective Kozlowski asked Stephen about the scratch on his nose. Stephen claimed he had received the scratch while working at the machine shop. He said that some metal shavings had got under his safety goggles, and then showed Kozlowski scratches and bruises on his hands and legs, claiming they were all from his work. Kozlowski then asked if Stephen had been having an affair. He denied it. He said that Tara had had an affair in the past, but it was now over. The detectives then asked if they could search the house, and Stephen agreed. Inside they found a handgun with 2 loaded magazines and some duct tape in the master bedroom. Stephen told them he had just forgotten to put away the gun. On the master bedroom nightstand they found a red photojournal that belonged to Verena. This struck detectives as odd because the journal was in the master bedroom and not in Verena's own bedroom. When detectives checked the walk-in closet, they noticed there were no empty spaces where Tara kept all of her business suits. Her suitcase was still in the closet, but Stephen explained that she had packed a second suitcase for the trip. The following day, Stephen was pulled over and arrested for driving on a suspended license. Stephen complained that the police were just using that as an excuse to detain him. After the arrest, police searched his car and found 2 envelopes of cash totaling $3,000. Stephen immediately hired the most expensive attorney in town and was released on bail within 6 hours. From that point forward, Stephen was much more cautious. He refused to answer any questions without his attorney present, and only in writing. Stephen had no problem talking to the media, though. He loved to cry in front of the cameras, pleading for the safe return of his wife. He naturally had strange facial expressions and bulging eyes, which only made his crying seem more awkward and forced. Initially, his appearances were filled with tears. But over time the tears dried up, and he began complaining about her excessive business travel and the possibility that she was having an affair. I get that she has to travel for business, but too much is too much, and that was too much. A couple of years ago, Tara and I did have a problem in our marriage with I don't want to call it an infidelity, but pretty close to an infidelity. The denigration of his wife didn't play well with the local TV viewers, who began to question his sincerity. The police asked Stephen to take a polygraph, but he denied their request. Instead, he and his attorney opted to have him take a polygraph privately, but police assumed he must have failed the test as Stephen kept the results to himself. Having seen Stephen on the nightly news, a former girlfriend of his came forward and told police she had recently received emails from him which read, "I am still in need of some excitement in my day. Wink wink. I just think of marriage vows like speed limits. Sometimes you have to break them." As police looked further into Stephen's explanation of Tara's disappearance, they came across more and more holes in the story. Airline records showed no flights with Tara on them, and her normal flight booking for the following Monday had gone unused. Her cell phone records also didn't show a call at the time that Stephen said she called a car service. The last call on her phone was to Stephen 18 minutes before she had arrived home that night. Despite Stephen claiming she always used a car service, she had actually only used a car service once in the past year. Police verified that she almost always drove herself to the airport and parked her car in the airport parking lot during the week. Additionally, nothing had been charged to her credit cards since she had paid for the airport parking at the lot that night on her way home. Stephen's cell phone records, however, were much busier. That evening he had called Verena 4 times. In the days following her disappearance, Stephen had called Tara's phone 6 times, pleading for her to come home. "Hey, I get that you're pissed at me. I just left the house. I have to go to the bank for my dad. Verena's at the house with the kids. Please, at least call your kids. It's ridiculous, Tara. It's not right. Just call, please, so I can talk to you. They didn't get to see you last night. It's me. Call us. Just let us know what's going on. The kids and I would like to talk to you. Please. I just don't know what the deal is, so call me. We're here. I'm just ordering pizza for dinner, so we'll be here. I'm just gonna have it delivered, I think, so call us. Bye." In other messages, he showed his anger. "Tara, next time I call you, pick up your phone. It's absolute bullshit that you can't call me or your kids. I know you're mad. I'm mad too. You traveling this much is not right." During the initial interview, Stephen had mentioned several times that he and Tara spent quite a bit of time exercising in nearby Stony Creek Park. The police now suspected that Stephen had killed his wife and possibly dumped her body in the park. 8 days after her disappearance, police began an extensive search of the area. Stony Creek Park was over 4,000 acres of thick woods and swamps. The media carried the story of the search, and Stephen spoke to the cameras several times, playing the role of grieving husband. "Please call anybody. Call the police, call me, call my in-laws, call someone." On the afternoon of February 28, a woman was walking along Mente Vernon Road on the edge of Stony Creek Park, not far from the Grants' home. Just a few yards from the roadway, she noticed something plastic crammed between the branches of a fallen tree. When she got closer, she could see that it was a large 1-gallon Ziploc bag with something red inside. The red color stood out in stark contrast to the snowy surroundings. When she picked up the bag, she could see that the red was from blood pooling in the bottom of the bag. Inside the bag, police found 4 clear plastic garbage bags, 1 pair of latex gloves, metal shavings, a 7-Eleven bag and another Ziploc bag. All the items were covered in human blood, using the newly found evidence. Detectives were able to get 2 search warrants, one for Stephen Grant's home and another for his father's tool and die shop. When police broke the door down at the tool and die shop, they found a dark and messy metal shop. Metal lathes, presses and other work equipment were covered with thick metal dust. What stood out to investigators was a large, clean, square-shaped area on the floor. It looked as if someone had laid a tarp there. On the floor directly under the door handle, they found what seemed to be a few tiny drops of blood. Simultaneously, another group of police showed up at the Grants' house. Though Stephen wasn't home, live news cameras filmed as officers entered the house. When Stephen arrived home shortly after the police had entered, they stopped his car as he drove up the street. Police requested him not to disturb the search, and he was calm and cooperative, but asked officers if he could take his dog for a walk. Police agreed, and Stephen put a leash on his dog and walked down the snowy streets while television cameras watched him leave. As investigators searched the house, they noticed a green Rubbermaid tub with a blue lid in the garage next to a little red wagon full of children's toys. Detective Kozlowski pulled off the lid to the tub and found a pile of black plastic bags stacked near the top. He touched the top one and noticed it was soft and mushy. As he tugged at the black bags, it tore and showed another bag and another bag. As he got deeper, he came to a clear plastic bag smeared with blood. Using a flashlight, Kozlowski initially thought possibly Stephen was storing some deer meat in the freezing cold garage, but as he dug deeper, he found a woman's bra. It was clear this was the body of Tara Grant. The tub was filled with Tara's frozen torso. The arms were severed at the shoulders, and the legs were severed at the tops of the thighs. Her head, arms, and legs were all missing. The torso still wore the grey Ann Taylor blouse that Stephen had told police she was wearing when she disappeared. Investigators now realized that Stephen had been walking the dog for more than an hour and hadn't returned to the house. He was on the run, and the manhunt began. Stephen, of course, knew exactly what the police would find. When he left the house with his dog, he phoned his friend Mike Zanlungo, a neighbor in the same subdivision. Stephen told Mike that he needed to borrow his truck for a bit so he could go visit his children at his sister's house. Mike later said that trusting him was the biggest mistake of his life. Stephen took Mike's truck and headed towards his sister Kelly's house. He called his sister as he drove. She told him they weren't at home, but were at their church having a fish fry. Stephen drove to the church and met his sister in the hallway. She immediately noticed he was extremely agitated and disoriented. He told Kelly, "I'm going to get arrested. They told me if they find a drop of blood in my house, I'm going to prison." Stephen then kissed his kids goodbye and drove to his sister's house to drop off the dog. When he got to the house, he looked for her .38 handgun but couldn't find it. Instead, he grabbed a full bottle of Vicodin that he found in the medicine cabinet and got back in the truck. He drove toward Lansing, Michigan, drinking whiskey and taking Vicodin the whole way. Along the route, he stopped to buy razor blades, a prepaid burner phone, a notebook, Tylenol PM, a black Sharpie pen, and a plastic toy gun. He was intent on killing himself, but was worried that he wouldn't have the nerve to do it himself. He took the Sharpie pen and marked over the red end cap of the toy gun. He hoped that if the police found him, he could pull the gun on them, and they would shoot and kill him. As he drove, Stephen avoided highways and took the back roads. He stopped again to get $500 out of an ATM and bought more whiskey and some Bailey's Irish cream. Highly intoxicated and crying, Stephen called his sister one last time and called Verena, who was now in Germany, at 1:30 a.m. He made one last call to his attorney, who encouraged him not to kill himself and to come back home, telling him that his kids needed him. Stephen cried, "She treated us like shit. It's her fault this happened. Everyone hates me, but it's her fault. She cheated on me, she left us alone, we meant nothing to her. I tried to be a good dad. I did. I love them so damn much." At 3:30 a.m. Stephen called his attorney again, telling him it was all an accident and the only way out of it was if he ended his own life. Barely able to speak from the drugs and alcohol, Stephen again called Verena and then called his sister Kelly one last time. He told Kelly he was in the Wilderness State Park and was planning on killing himself. Police were already waiting outside her home. After the call, she walked outside and told officers where to find him. Detective Kozlowski's phone rang, and when he saw that it was an international number, he knew it was Verena Dierks calling from Germany. Verena was crying and had just gotten off the phone with Stephen. Everything he said was a lie. Everything. And I believed everything. He told me it was an accident, he said. She smacked me, and she yelled at me, and I pushed her back, and she banged her head and was dead. Initially, Verena denied having an affair with Stephen, but eventually admitted that it was true. We liked each other. We liked each other more than we should. And it started about 4 weeks ago. It was just talking. I don't know what, maybe because Tara was always gone. And then it just happened. But it was never physical. On that, I swear. We kissed. But that's all. Detective Kozlowski questioned her more and got her to admit that Stephen had performed oral sex on her, but it was just one time. And it was before that happened to Tara. It was before the February the 9th bar. Verena then told the detective that Stephen intended to kill himself. Helicopters scoured the vast wilderness state park and quickly found his abandoned truck. Within a few hours, searchers followed footsteps leading away from the truck and found his plastic gun, the notebook, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. By 7:00 a.m., searchers found Stephen barely conscious in the snow beneath a tree. His body temperature was down to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Suffering from severe hypothermia and frostbite, Stephen was airlifted to the nearest hospital. That morning, police searched Stony Creek Park again. This time they found one of Tara's hands, her feet, a leg, and chunks of her flesh. Still in intensive care, Stephen was charged with murder and handcuffed to his hospital bed. Though still suffering from hypothermia, Stephen just couldn't keep his mouth shut. His attorney had dropped him as a client. Stephen called Detective Kozlowski and told him he wanted to talk. When confronted with the evidence against him, he rambled on for almost 4 hours in a long, detailed confession from his hospital bed. Stephen Grant mugshot and Stephen and Tara. He explained that Tara had come home that night, and they continued the argument that had started on the phone. He said that during their 11-year marriage, Tara had constantly belittled him, and he had had enough of it. When she slapped him in their bedroom, his anger grew out of control. He said he had told Verena that when he hit her, she fell and hit her head, but that was a lie. He had actually strangled her to death on the bedroom floor. Grant, I was ready to go to bed, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And when she smacked me, I lost it. Tara had, as long as I can remember. She belittled me, and in her one way, she knew if she hit me, I'd hit her back. Grant, she said, I got to do what I have to do in my job, and it's none of your business. So she started to turn around, and I grabbed her wrist. Just stop, I said. You're not going anywhere. And I said, we're going to finish this conversation. And she slapped me. And after that, I don't really remember what happened. She fell. I know that she banged the back of her head on the floor, and then she said something like, that's it. I'm going to take the kids. You're going to be fucking homeless. You're a piece of shit. And I choked her on the carpet. She had started to get back up when I put my hand on her neck. I grabbed her neck and choked her. Detective McLean, were you looking at her face? Grant, no, I covered her face up. Detective McLean, what do you cover her face up with? Grant, grey underwear or a great shirt. Detective Kozlowski, how did you know that she had died? Grant, when she stopped moving, and I was worried. I was really worried. The Grant's children were asleep in their rooms down the hall while Stephen murdered their mother. Immediately after strangling his wife, Stephen sent a text to Verena, you owe me a kiss. He left a note saying the same thing on her pillow, then returned to his dead wife on the bedroom floor. Grant tied one of his belts around her neck and dragged her down the stairs and into the garage. He put her body in the back of her Isuzu Trooper SUV. And I dropped her. She was too hard to pick up, and the belt broke, and she fell. It was the most disgusting noise. It just sounded like dropping a watermelon on the cement. Moments later, Verena returned home, and I kept thinking, we've got a body in this garage. What the hell do I do with the body? And thinking I killed my wife. I was thinking my life was over. Stephen explained to detectives that he let the body sit in the back of the SUV all of that Saturday. On Sunday, he drove her body to his father's tool and die shop, where he used the tools there to dismember her. So I looked around the shop. I was looking for something. I was looking for a hacksaw or something. At some point I threw up. And I threw up again. And then I drank some more whiskey. And then I just told myself, look, if you don't do this, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And I kept cutting her up, worried that the body would smell. He put the body parts back into the SUV and came home to spend the rest of the day with Verena and the kids. I tried to make things as normal as possible for everybody, and I continuously flirted with Verena because I thought that was the only way I was going to be able to get through this. That Sunday evening, Stephen put the kids' red sled in the back of the SUV, and at 3:00 a.m., he snuck out of the house and drove to Stony Creek Park to dispose of the body parts. At the park, he piled the body parts onto the sled and dragged it up a hill. But things went wrong, and as soon as I started going, it was like Keystone Cops. The sled took off, and now I'm chasing after this sled that has my wife's cut-up body in it down a hill. Finally got it stopped when it fell over and it broke. So now all these pieces are now fallen all over the place. So Tara's torso I took and I buried in the snow. And then the pieces I put on the sled and I buried that in the snow. I'd done a very, very bad job of hiding anything. It's right there in the open. By Tuesday evening, he was worried that he had done a poor job of hiding the body parts and returned to the park. He cut open the clear plastic bags that he had wrapped the pieces in and distributed the parts randomly throughout the park, leaving one Ziploc bag near the road that was later found. The following week, when Stephen heard that the police were going to search the park, he went back to gather the pieces. I thought, I'm screwed. They're going to find that, because that torso at this point is still buried in the snow. I had to dig it out. It was frozen in the ground. I threw it over my shoulder and carried it. Confused and worried that he would get caught, Stephen moved the body parts back and forth several times, eventually storing the torso in his garage. And I kept thinking, I got away with this. I can't believe I got away with this. Search teams found other parts of Tara in the area where the first Ziploc bag was discovered. Stephen had cut her body into 14 different pieces, but some parts were never recovered. It was assumed that animals may have made off with the missing parts. Despite his recorded confession, which Stephen also wrote and signed, he pleaded not guilty. Verena, who had returned to Germany, came back for the trial to testify against Stephen. She told the jury how her employer constantly tried to kiss her, exposed himself to her, and eventually, just moments after he killed his wife, had sex with her. On Friday, December 21, 2007, the jury found Stephen Grant guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced him to 50 years in prison. Stephen tried to appeal the decision, but was denied and will likely spend 50 to 80 years behind bars. Tara's sister was given control of the estate and custody of their 2 children, but their grandfather, Stephen's father, was denied visitation rights. Stephen's father tried desperately to regain visitation rights, but eventually lost hope and committed suicide in June 2008. Tara's children now participate in a yearly walk called Tara's Walk. The walk has raised tens of thousands of dollars to help the victims of domestic violence. This tragic story offers several profound lessons and pieces of advice, particularly regarding the dynamics of relationships, the consequences of unaddressed resentment, and the importance of honesty and intervention. One significant lesson learned is the destructive power of unaddressed resentment and perceived imbalances within a relationship. Stephen Grant's resentment towards his wife, Tara, grew significantly over time, fueled by her successful, high-paying executive career that required extensive global travel, leaving him to primarily care for their children. While Tara was earning $168,000 a year, with a $28,000 bonus, Stephen was only bringing home a measly $19,000 from his father's machine shop. This financial disparity and the jet-setter lifestyle Tara led, combined with his feeling that she was pushing him away and making him feel inadequate, clearly built up intense anger and frustration in Stephen. The story indicates that Tara herself acknowledged this in a letter, apologizing for pushing him away and making him feel inadequate, and even suggested renewing their wedding vows. However, this acknowledgement came too late to prevent the tragic outcome. Advice stemming from this is that couples must actively and openly communicate about financial disparities, career choices, and perceived imbalances in responsibilities, and seek professional help, such as marriage counseling, when these issues begin to foster deep-seated resentment. Ignoring or letting such feelings fester can lead to devastating emotional and, as seen here, physical consequences. Another crucial lesson highlights the perilous path of infidelity and deception, particularly when combined with escalating conflict. Stephen's resentment culminated in an affair with the couple's 19-year-old au pair, Verena Dierk, which became physical in early February 2007. He even had sex with Verena just minutes after he claimed Tara disappeared. This secret relationship was a clear betrayal that complicated an already strained marriage. When Tara returned home on February 9, 2007, an argument over her travel escalated into a physical confrontation, with Stephen admitting he strangled her to death after she slapped him and belittled him, threatening to take the kids and leave him fucking homeless. This tragic escalation from a verbal argument to murder underscores the critical importance of de-escalation techniques and never resorting to violence, regardless of provocation or emotional distress. The story serves as a stark warning that emotional and physical violence are never acceptable solutions to marital problems. Furthermore, Stephen's elaborate web of lies and deceptions to the police, including fabricating stories about Tara being exposed to nerve gas or kidnapped by terrorists, and claiming she had an affair with her boss, demonstrates the futility and self-destructive nature of attempting to cover up a crime. His attempts to mislead investigators with false information about Tara's travel plans, phone calls, and car service usage were systematically exposed by police, who meticulously checked airline and cell phone records. This reinforces the advice that honesty, even in the face of grave consequences, is ultimately the only viable path, as deceit inevitably unravels and compounds the initial wrongdoing. The story also offers insights into recognizing warning signs and the devastating ripple effects of such crimes. Stephen's immediate actions after the murder, sending a text and leaving a note for Verena saying, "You owe me a kiss," then engaging in sexual activity with her moments later, reveal a chilling lack of remorse and a deeply disturbed state of mind. His subsequent efforts to dismember Tara's body at his father's tool and die shop, and then scatter the parts in Stony Creek Park, were gruesome attempts to conceal the crime, which ultimately failed. His bizarre behavior, such as his awkward and forced crying in front of cameras, his denigration of Tara to the media, and his inconsistent stories, were red flags to both the public and law enforcement. The advice here is to pay attention to unusual behavior, inconsistencies in narratives, and any form of emotional or physical manipulation in individuals, especially when a loved one is missing. The profound impact of Stephen's actions extended far beyond Tara. Their 2 young children lost both parents, with Tara's sister gaining custody. Furthermore, Stephen's father, who desperately tried to maintain visitation rights with his grandchildren, but was denied, tragically committed suicide. This illustrates that acts of violence have wide-ranging and devastating consequences that can ripple through entire families and communities for years. The establishment of Tara's Walk to help victims of domestic violence serves as a powerful reminder that tragedies can inspire efforts to prevent future harm and support those affected by violence. The ultimate lesson is that domestic violence in any form has severe and far-reaching consequences, and resources and support systems are available for those experiencing or witnessing it, emphasizing the critical need to seek help and break cycles of abuse.